We wait far too long to admit when a relationship has run its course. Not because we are patient or loyal, but because we subtly stop trusting our own signals. Research shows that almost 60% of adults stay in draining relationships far beyond the point where their mind has already decided something is off. The cost isn't dramatic, it is accumulative. You feel it in the way you hesitate before replying, the way your energy shifts when their name pops up, the way your body prepares for a conversation you haven't even had yet. There is a quiet form of relational stress that doesn't show up in big arguments. It shows up in anticipatory tension, the kind that builds over months. Studies that track emotional fatigue have found that chronic interpersonal strain predicts physiological stress markers more strongly than daily workload pressure. That means a complicated coworker, a guilt-heavy family relationship, or a friendship that's shifted into constant management can influence your mind, brain, and body more than your calendar does. Your body's going to pay the price. Your brain's going to pay the price. Your mental health's going to pay the price. And this is because these relationships become real physical thoughts inside your mind, brain, and body. And they show us up as networks, physical networks, chemicals, proteins, energy. And when they are toxic, the proteins misfold, the chemistry is unbalanced, and the energy goes haywire. And we feel that it impacts us, it strains us. And here's the part people don't talk about. Your mind notices these patterns long before you actually understand them. The non-conscious level of the mind is always scanning for disruptive patterns, storing interactions and flagging any kind of mismatch. One of my favorite things about the non-conscious mind is that it is always on our side. So not only does it identify the problems we need to deal with, it always provides not just one, but multiple ways out and through the problems. So when these kind of mismatches in relationships repeat because we haven't captured and analyzed those thoughts, the brain starts expressing the story. You might experience this as a heaviness in your chest, a tightening in your stomach, a sudden drop in motivation, or a lingering fatigue after the smallest interaction. And this isn't about someone being good or bad. It's about the cumulative impact of how relationships shape your inner world. Some connections expand who you are. Others slowly make you smaller. And the mind feels that shift first. People often tell me, but they haven't done anything terrible, as if harm must be some catastrophic thing to count. But relational drain really comes from a single moment. It comes from the slow erosion of trust, reciprocity, emotional safety, and honest effort. It comes from being the one who adjusts the most. It comes from holding the entire weight of the relationship while telling yourself it's mutual. The neuroscience here is honest. Repetition trains the brain. When you repeatedly walk into interactions that require emotional bracing, the conscious mind begins to anticipate that bracing, activating the predictive networks in the brain before you've even made contact. And that's why people say things like, I feel exhausted just thinking about seeing them. It's lived in the mind-brain-body network. So the real question isn't, is this relationship good or bad? It is, what is this relationship consistently wiring your brain to expect? Because every relationship, healthy or harmful, teaches us something. Every conversation builds patterns. Every repeated dynamic becomes part of your internal climate. And if the climate of a relationship feels draining more often than it feels strengthening, your mind is giving you information you can trust. It's telling you to listen. So in this week's episode, we're going to walk through a research-backed 5-point checklist to help you understand exactly when it may be time to step back. There's a particular kind of emotional fatigue that builds long before we are willing to admit something is wrong. It shows up quietly in the space between who you are and who you have to become when you are around someone who drains you. Before you pick up the phone, you feel your shoulders rise. Before you reply to that message, you feel your energy shift. Before you walk into the conversation, your mind's already rehearsing the outcome, as if it's bracing for impact. Most people don't recognize this as a sign, as signals. They see it as maybe a mood or a phase or an overreaction. But in long-term studies on chronic relational strain, participants showed higher emotional exhaustion and more disrupted stress biomarkers from difficult personal relationships than from high-pressure work environments. And that means that the tension you feel when engaging with someone who drains you isn't imagined, it's measurable. It is real, it's chronic, and it's changing your brain. And yet we minimize it. We say things like, it's not that bad. They haven't done anything terrible. But the emotional experience of a draining relationship really comes from one catastrophic event. As I mentioned, it's the slow erosion, the 1,000 tiny adjustments you make so that the connection can continue. It's moments when you hold back the truth to avoid escalating things. It's the way you begin adjusting your tone, your timing, your needs, even your identity. I want you to think about the last time you walked away from a conversation feeling smaller than when you entered it. Not because someone insulted you, but because something felt so heavy. Something felt off. In mind brain research, this kind of emotional contraction is often the first indicator that the non conscious level of the mind has already flagged a pattern the conscious mind hasn't caught up with yet. Your mind is constantly gathering data. Every interaction, every shift in tone, every inconsistency, and your brain expresses what the mind directs. That is why the sensation shows up physically before you can really consciously articulate why. There is a detail from longitudinal emotional fatigue research that stays with me. People who remained in draining relationships reported a pattern of tiredness that followed them into parts of life unrelated to the relationship itself. They felt drained at work, less motivated on personal goals, more irritable in peaceful environments. That's because the mind doesn't compartmentalize the way we think it actually does. Stress in one relationship becomes emotional residue that travels with you. Someone sits across from you and says, I just feel tense around them. Or, I feel like I have to over-explain myself. Or, I adjust who I am depending on their mood. And I always hear the same underlying message. My mind has been tracking this pattern longer than I have admitted. That's how these dynamics usually unfold. First comes the tension, then comes the self-editing, then comes the guilt for feeling what you feel. People worry they are misreading things. They tell themselves they are being too sensitive. But sensitivity is not the problem. Pattern recognition is the problem. When a relationship consistently drains you, your mind is signaling that something in the connection is no longer balanced. Your non-conscious mind knows the truth of a relationship long before your conscious mind and your words catch up. The emotional distance you feel, the slow resentment that creeps in, the way you leave a conversation feeling depleted, these aren't random moments. These are data points. A major study on emotional forecasting found that people underestimate the long-term cost of relationships that feel chronically tense. They underestimate how drained they will feel in the future, how much bandwidth they'll lose, how much self-trust they will sacrifice by staying in dynamics that never improve. And that's why so many people stay too long. They trust hope more than they trust their internal signals. Think about the moments when you have changed your tone to keep things calm, when you have softened your opinions to avoid a reaction, when you have thought, I'm tired just thinking about seeing. That exhaustion isn't dramatic. It's the mind-brain-body network expressing a pattern that built through repetition. There's also a quiet experience many people don't really know how to articulate. The loss of emotional spaciousness. You feel it when you hesitate before sharing good news because you're unsure how they're going to respond. You'll feel it when you hide the parts of yourself that make you feel most alive because this person doesn't support them or understand them. You feel it when the conversations become more about emotional labor than connection. And here's the truth I want you to hear without judgment. The moment you start editing who you are to keep the peace, the relationship is no longer shaping you. If a relationship consistently leaves you exhausted, it is training your brain to anticipate exhaustion even before you've interacted. Predictive networks in the brain become shaped by emotional history, what's happened. And if the history is consistently draining, the anticipation becomes draining as well. So before we move into what the brain is actually doing during all of this, I want you to sit with one question. Where in your life are you feeling this quiet emotional drain? Not the loud conflict, but the subtle erosion, the kind that you have learned to carry. Because identifying this emotional experience is the foundation for understanding the deeper mechanism underneath it, and for knowing whether it may be time to step back or step away entirely. There's a moment in every draining relationship when the emotional story you've been telling yourself collides with the neurological reality underneath. You stop feeling off and start feeling patterned. Not because something dramatic has happened, but because your mind has been tracking the truth and wiring it into the brain longer than you've been willing to say it out loud. It's become a big, established, ugly thorn tree you can't seem to avoid. Here's the grounding truth I want to start with. Your brain isn't conflicted about this relationship. You are. The brain simply expresses whatever the mind has rehearsed through repetition, and repetition is powerful. Let me explain how this works without making it too abstract. A major predictive processing study found that when someone experiences repeated relational tension, like criticism, unpredictability, or guilt-based interactions, the mind begins anticipating stress before the interaction actually occurs. This makes the brain gear up for toxic stress because just thinking about the interaction activates the same network as though you were in the interaction. And this means that the exhaustion you feel leading up to a conversation isn't imagined, it isn't immaturity, it isn't oversensitivity, it's a forecast. Your mind has gathered the history. The brain is expressing the prediction. To make this visual, imagine walking through a garden. The first time the ground is soft and unmarked. But if you walk that route every day for months, something changes. The soil gives away. The footsteps carve a path. Eventually you follow the trail automatically, even if you didn't consciously choose it. That's neuroplasticity in action. That's what happens when your mind keeps walking in the same emotional path. Tension, self-protection, fatigue. Not because you're flawed, but because the mind drives the brain, and when the conscious mind works alone without the wise guidance of the unconscious part, a healthy managed mind means a healthy brain and body because it can regulate the amount and quality of the electromagnetic energy moving through the brain and through the body. So the brain reshapes based on whatever the mind repeats. Now let's bring in another layer of science. A study from the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that anticipatory stress before the interaction was significantly higher than the stress during the interaction itself. So it's worse before than during. The non-conscious mind alerts the body long before your conscious mind has formed a narrative. Why? Because the non-conscious level of the mind stores patterns like a towering filing cabinet, not as isolated files, but as linked chains of emotional meaning. When a relationship repeatedly drains you, the deeper mind tags those moments so it can safeguard. And that's why a simple text can make your stomach tighten or your chest feel heavy. It's not intuition, it's a learned prediction. And prediction changes physiology. Your heart rate adjusts, your breath shortens, your muscles prepare. Your conscious mind goes rogue and works solo, which means its memory retrieval becomes faster for negative history and slower for positive history. Let me shift us with another visual so this doesn't become too theoretical. Picture an iceberg. The tip, the conscious mind, is the part that creates excuses, rationalizes, and justifies the relationship and minimizes the drain. But the massive structure under the surface, the non-conscious mind, is holding years of emotional data. In fact, it holds every experience you've ever had, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and solutions for the bad and the ugly. So when a relationship becomes consistently draining, the iceberg moves first. The conscious mind needs to choose to work collaboratively with the unconscious, or simply follows behind, or falls behind, trying to explain away feelings that it didn't initiate. And this is why people say things like, I don't know why I feel this way. They actually do know. The deeper mind recognized the truth first, under the iceberg. The insight and words just arrive later when they stopped to listen. It logs patterns so it can forecast the next moment and find the best way through. That's why the same argument feels heavier the 10th time than the first. That's why the same disappointment hits harder months later. It's not because the situation changed, it's because your conscious mind stopped treating these moments as isolated incidents and stored them as evidence. This is where many people misunderstand their own reactions. They think, why am I getting so upset over something so small? But the reaction isn't to the small moment, it's to the hundreds of moments that came before it. Now let me introduce something we haven't talked about yet. The way that the brain recalibrates emotional thresholds. So when a relationship repeatedly drains you, the threshold for feeling drained and strained lowers. So what used to take a major conflict now takes a single tone shift. What used to take a sharp comment now takes a subtle change in their energy. This isn't oversensitivity, it's pattern-based recalibration. Let's talk about sleep for a second. Because if you are watching this and you're not sleeping well, everything else suffers. Your focus, your mood, your ability to manage stress. It really starts with rest. I finally upgraded to a Brooklyn bedding mattress, and I am not exaggerating when I say it's been such a game changer. The first thing that I noticed was how solid it felt, but not stiff, but sturdy, like it was built to actually last. And then there's this perfect balance that I love. Enough support to keep your spine lined, but also soft enough that you're not lying on a board all night. Here's what makes Brooklyn bedding very different. They design and assemble every mattress in their own Arizona factory. So there's no middleman marking up the price, just honest craftsmanship and quality materials. They are endorsed by the American Chiropractic Association. They are 100% fiberglass free. And if you tend to sleep hot, they use cooling technology like Glaciotex covers and copper-infused foams to regulate your temperature all night. Fabulous. And they give you 120 nights to try it. If it doesn't work for you, they'll help you return or swap it completely hassle-free. So if you are ready to actually wake up feeling rested, go to brooklynbedding.com and use my promo code Dr. Leaf at checkout to get 30% off site-wide. This offer is not available anywhere else. That's brooklynbedding.com, promo code Dr. Leaf with 30% off. Support the show and let them know that we sent you. brooklynbedding.com, promo code Dr. Leaf. Okay, I have to be honest with you. I have tried so many things in the wellness space. And when GLP-1 started trending everywhere, I was curious. But injecting myself with something every week just didn't sit right with me. I wanted something that actually worked and that I felt good putting into my body. That's why I was so excited to find Veracity. Veracity is an all-natural, drug-free, clinically proven way to support your metabolism, which is really the root cause of so many health struggles. And their hero product, Metabolism Ignite, is the #1 doctor-recommended GLP-1 booster and alternative. We are talking an 85% reduction in hunger, clinically proven to help you lose an average of 9 pounds in 90 days. No side effects, no allergens, and 100% plant-based. I've been taking it, just 2 capsules with breakfast, and I feel genuinely energized and focused all day. And it was founded by a certified hormonal health coach who developed it from her own experiences with metabolic issues. I use Veracity and I think you should too. So before Metabolism Ignite sells out again, make the switch to GLP-1s the natural way. Head to veracityhealth.co and use the code Dr. Leaf for up to 65% off your order. So once again, that is VERACITY health.co for up to 65% off. And make sure you use my promo code Dr. Leaf so they know I sent you. To make this more practical, I want to tell you about a private client I worked with. She told me that she felt drained every time a particular friend reached out, but she couldn't explain why. There was no dramatic betrayal, no major fight, nothing big, but every message brought tension. Every hangout ended in emotional fatigue. And she kept saying, I think I'm just tired, until she finally admitted something deeper. For years, she had been adjusting herself in that friendship, softening her accomplishments to avoid judgment, monitoring her tone to prevent passive-aggressive comments, giving more emotional support than she received. None of it was extreme, but it was constant. Her mind tracked it long before she did, and her brain followed. The moment she recognized the pattern, she said something I'll never forget. I wasn't anxious. I was aware. That's what this chapter is about. Awareness, mechanism, pattern, prediction. Your brain isn't broken. It's responding to what your mind has repeatedly experienced and wired into it. When you feel yourself bracing for someone, that's not a personal flaw. That's not you being dramatic. That's not you being too much. That is the mind-brain-body network doing exactly what it's designed to do. It's preparing you. So before we move into the myths and cultural narratives that keep people stuck in draining relationships, I want you to ask yourself one question. What is your mind predicting even when you pretend not to notice? At some stage in a draining relationship, the emotional exhaustion becomes familiar, but the stories we tell ourselves about why we're staying become even more familiar. And these stories are so powerful. They keep people in dynamics that wear them down for months, sometimes years. And they are not random. They are shaped by culture, family, guilt, hope, and a fear of what it means to finally acknowledge the truth. People stay in harmful relationships more because of guilt than because of love. That isn't judgment, it's data. In a large relational behavior survey, guilt was one of the strongest predictors of staying in relationships that no longer felt reciprocal. Not hope, not loyalty, not shared history, guilt. But guilt is only one of the myths that keep people stuck. Let's walk through the real ones, clearly, directly, and without shame. The first myth is this: if I walk away, I'm abandoning them. This belief is deeply cultural. Many people were taught from childhood to prioritize other people's comfort over their own emotional reality. So when a relationship drains them, they justify staying by imagining the other person will fall apart without them. But here's the truth: most people avoid. Staying in a relationship out of obligation erodes both people. It keeps you in emotional debt and keeps them from experiencing the natural consequences of their behavior. Care built on resentment isn't care, and the mind feels that long before the words surface. The second myth is subtle but powerful. They will change if I stay long enough. This one is fueled by hope, and hope is beautiful. And when it isn't paired with reality, it becomes a trap. Research on relational behavior shows that past behavior is a stronger predictor of future behavior than intention, no matter how many apologies, promises, or resets occur in between. People rarely change in environments where the dynamic never shifts. These behaviors don't inspire growth. They reinforce patterns. The mind begins to normalize dysfunction, and it teaches the brain that enduring tension is the price of connection. There's a third myth that often sounds reasonable but carries enormous emotional cost. I've known them for so long, I can't just walk away. Length of relationship has become an inflated marker of value in modern culture. But time is not proof of health. Time is not proof of mutual effort. Time is not proof of emotional safety. I want to offer you a reframe or a reconceptualization here. A long history with someone doesn't guarantee a long future with them. The mind evolves, people evolve, seasons shift, and sometimes the most honest thing you can do is admit that the version of the relationship you're honoring no longer exists. The fourth myth is the one that creates the deepest internal conflict. It's not always bad. We have good moments too. Of course you do. Most draining relationships aren't terrible all the time. They have got warm pockets, familiar rhythms, a shared language, inside jokes, or moments of ease. But intermittent reinforcement, the unpredictable pattern of good moments mixed with draining ones, is one of the strongest psychological forces that keeps people tied to unstable dynamics. This is why you feel relief one day and dread the next. It's not emotional confusion, it's emotional inconsistency. Imagine a weather pattern that changes every day. Sunlight in the morning, a storm by noon, quiet skies in the evening, more rain at night. You wouldn't call that climate stable. You would call it unpredictable. That's how intermittent reinforcement works in relationships. The weather keeps changing. Boundaries don't create conflict, they reveal it. They surface whatever the relationship has been hiding. If someone reacts poorly to healthy limits, the limits don't cause the issue. It exposed. Patterns revealed are patterns that can finally be understood. And finally, there's the myth that keeps people resentful and exhausted. I should be able to handle this. This one comes from pride, conditioning, fear of vulnerability. Many people think leaving or stepping back is a sign of weakness. But the science consistently shows that chronic relational strain rewires your emotional thresholds, making it harder to regulate yourself, harder to think clearly, and harder to stay connected with your own values. Handing something shouldn't cost your well-being. Loyalty without reciprocity isn't loyalty. It's self-abandonment. Not in a shaming way, in a factual way. When you pour into a relationship that takes and really replenishes, your mind registers the imbalance and your brain expresses it as fatigue, tension, or emotional contraction. A patient once told me that she stayed in a draining friendship because she believed real friends don't give up on each other. That sounds noble. It sounds real. But when we explored it, she realized she wasn't honoring the friendship. She was honoring guilt, fear, and a personal history of over-responsibility. Every time this friend dismissed her feelings, she rationalized it with, they're going through a lot. Every time she felt drained after meeting them, she said, it's just a stressful season. Every time she felt small in their presence, she said, I'll get better when things calm down. None of these sentences were lies. They were survival narratives she had built to avoid acknowledging the emotional cost of that friendship. She felt lighter when she stopped explaining away her own experience. And this is the heart of chapter 3. Recognizing the stories that keep you stuck. Not because you are weak, but because you have been conditioned to prioritize harmony over honesty. Before we move on, I want you to ask yourself a question. Which myth do I feel myself living inside of right now? Okay, real talk. Midweek, my brain has already done a lot. And the last thing I want to do is stand in the kitchen at 6 p.m. trying to figure out what to make for dinner. For a while, I was stuck in the same loop. And honestly, Even my favorite pasta with fresh basil pesto and juicy chicken can only carry you so far before you start craving something new. And that's where HelloFresh came in for me. Because I care deeply about what goes into my body, real, wholesome ingredients that actually nourish you, and HelloFresh delivers exactly that. They make it exciting. They have bold flavors from around the world, Vietnamese, Moroccan, Caribbean, with everything pre-portioned and sent straight to your door. No recipe rabbit holes, no mystery ingredients, all measured out, all good quality. Over 80 global recipes every month. So you're always eating well and eating interestingly. And at the end of the full day, nothing hits home like home cooking. I use HelloFresh, and honestly, you should too. Go to hellofresh.com/drleaf10fm to get 10 free meals plus a free NutriBullet Ultra Plus 2-in-1 compact kitchen system at $189.99 value on your third box. Free meals applied as a discount on your first box. New subscribers only, varies by plan. Must order third box by May 31st, 2026. When I started this podcast, I had a lot of what ifs running through my mind, and not the good kind. What if no one listens? What if it doesn't connect? And that kind of toxic thinking can really paralyze even the most purpose-driven person. Now, enter Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses worldwide and 10% of all e-commerce in the US. So whether you're just getting started or ready to scale, Shopify has everything in one place. Inventory, payments, analytics, email, and social campaigns. There's no juggling of a dozen platforms, which is really great. Their AI tools even help you write product descriptions and polish your photography. And if you ever get stuck, their award-winning 24/7 support has got your back. So I chose to detox those thoughts and take the leap anyway, and it's been one of the best decisions of my life. Having a partner like Shopify made that a whole lot easier. Plus, Shopify has the best converting checkout on the planet. That iconic Shop Pay button that turns browsers into buyers. So it's time to turn those what ifs into with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/leaf. Go to shopify.com/leaf. That's shopify.com/leaf. Sometimes a deeper understanding arrives not as a dramatic moment, but as a steady realization that the relationship you've been holding together has quietly stopped holding you. And by the time you reach this chapter, you have already felt the emotional weight, seen the mental patterns, and recognized the myths that kept you anchored. Now the question shifts from what is happening to me to what does stepping back actually mean for my mind? Every relationship teaches your mind something, and not every lesson deserves a lifetime seat in your life. Some connections strengthen you, others stretch you, and some only continue because you've forgotten that distance is also a valid choice. Here's the reconceptualization I want to offer you. Stepping back isn't about leaving someone, it's about returning to yourself. There's no judgment in that, no hostility, no moral ranking, just honest alignment between your internal world and your external relationships. People are often taught that the strong thing is to endure, adjust, tolerate, and keep giving until something improves. But endurance isn't the same as health, and giving isn't the same as connection. The mind thrives on reciprocity, on patterns of mutual investment. When a relationship keeps taking more than it gives, the mind doesn't interpret that as loyalty. It interprets it as imbalance. To make this more concrete, picture this as a landscape rather than a story. Some relationships feel like flat, steady ground. You can walk freely, breathe deeply, and more without bracing. Others feel like an uneven terrain. You adjust your steps, tighten your posture, monitor your footing, and there are the ones where every step feels heavier because the ground itself is unpredictable. The reconceptualization isn't walk away. The reconceptualization is notice where you are walking. Your inner landscape shifts based on who you share life with. And when the terrain has become unstable for too long, stepping onto firmer ground isn't a betrayal, it's a recalibration. Let's bring in some science to anchor this. Psychological distancing studies show that even minimal space from a chronically draining relationship significantly reduces stress biomarkers. That means your mind and brain respond to distance faster than you might expect. The shift is also measurable, not metaphorical. This is why so many people describe a surprising sense of relief after even a temporary break. Their predictive tension lowers, their breath deepens, their internal dialogue becomes quieter, the brain finally stops preparing for emotional impact that never arrives. The change isn't dramatic, it's physiological. One person I work with experienced this without expecting to. She didn't make a bold announcement or a final decision. She simply stopped initiating contact with someone who repeatedly dismissed her needs. Within 2 weeks, she noticed she was sleeping better, her appetite had returned, she laughed more freely. When she reflected on what had changed, she said, "Nothing is different on the outside, but everything feels different on the inside of me." That's the power of stepping back. You create enough space for your neural network of the body to remember what safety feels like. Many people fear distancing because they think it makes them unkind. But distance isn't punishment, it's perspective. When you are too close to a pattern, you can't see it fully. You are busy responding and adapting and shifting. When you step back, the pattern becomes very visible, and visibility is the first step towards wisdom. Another grounding insight for this chapter is this: you don't only lose relationships, you sometimes lose the version of yourself the relationship required you to be, and that loss is healthy. Growth often means shedding the identities built around emotional management. Think of boundaries not as walls but as windows. They let you see clearly. They let you choose how much light enters. They help you stay connected without being consumed. Your mind has been sending signals for a while now: fatigue, hesitation, emotional bracing, a sense of shrinking. The reframe or reconceptualization is learning to interpret those signals not as inconveniences but as data, as communication, as truth. And so instead of asking, "Is it wrong to step back?" I want to offer you a different question. What becomes possible in your life when you create space where exhaustion used to live? Before we move into the next chapter, a practical tool to help you make these choices with confidence. Stepping back isn't a rejection of someone else. It's a recognition of yourself. There are moments in life when we overcomplicate decisions that are actually asking for something simple, a way to see the truth without emotional noise. By the time someone reaches this point, they have already felt the emotional exhaustion, recognized the patterns that drain them, and understood the myths that kept them tethered. Chapter 5 exists for one purpose: to give your mind a practical science-backed tool that makes the decision clearer. We're not talking about a full mind management process here, just a pared down, immediately usable approach that helps you measure the state of a relationship without guilt, panic, or wishful thinking. Think of this as a calibration you can use in real time. And it starts with a question that research consistently points to: does this relationship strengthen my identity or shrink my identity? And identity isn't something abstract. It's built through repeated experiences. Studies on relational self-concept show that the people we interact with consistently shape our sense of possibility, safety, and self-expression. So when a relationship is healthy, your internal world expands. When it's draining, your internal world contracts. And the mind notices these patterns long before you consciously articulate them. So here's the tool you can use. It's a 5-signal check. It's not a test. It's not a scorecard. It's a lens, a way to observe your internal cues with honesty. The first signal: energy, direction. Instead of asking, "Do I enjoy them?" ask, "Do I feel more or less like myself after interacting with them?" If the relationship consistently costs you energy, if you leave interactions feeling dimmed rather than steadied, that's not preference. It's information. A behavioral health study found that consistent emotional drain predicts lowered motivation in unrelated parts of life. This means the cost is not contained inside the relationship, it spreads. It touches your creativity, focus, and resilience. Signal number 2, predictability of harm. Everyone has tense days, but patterns matter more than moments. Ask yourself, is the difficult part of this relationship predictable? Is it a pattern? If the answer is yes, that's the signal. The mind treats predictability as a pattern, and the brain expresses that pattern through physiological preparation. To visualize this, think of forecasting weather. One storm is the weather, storms every week are climate. Climate changes how you prepare, even when the sky looks clear. Signal number 3, identity impact. Here the question becomes deeply personal. Who am I allowed to be around? If you shrink, soften, or mute parts of yourself to maintain the connection, the relationship is influencing your identity, not with intention, but with repetition. Research on social identity modulation shows that people adjust their emotional expression and even posture around those who repeatedly invalidate or minimize them. Over time, these adjustments become habits. Habits become identity cues, and identity cues shape how your conscious mind appraises your possibilities. Signal number 4, emotional reciprocity. Ask yourself, is the effort shared, or do I carry most of the emotional load? Reciprocity doesn't mean equality in every moment. It means shared investment over time. When you are always the one stabilizing, explaining, or absorbing, your mind logs that as imbalance. The brain doesn't need drama to detect misalignment. It just needs repetition. Signal 5, mind-body sync. This one is simple but easy to ignore. Does my body agree with what my words are saying? If your chest tightens while your mouth says, it's fine, your mind is revealing the truth behind your language. In a study on embodied cognition, researchers found that physical tension often registers emotional mismatch faster than conscious awareness. So your body reacts to patterns your thoughts haven't named yet because your non-conscious puts the thoughts in your body before you become consciously even aware of them. Now, the 5 signal check isn't meant to tell you what to do. It's meant to tell you what's real. It helps you step outside the stories, the guilt, hope, obligation, nostalgia, and look at the relationship through the lens of lived data. A man told me he felt off around a co-worker he had known for years. No major conflict existed, but he noticed he always over-explained himself and anticipated being misunderstood and felt tired after conversations. So when he used the 5 signal check, all 5 signals pointed in one direction. The relationship consistently cost him more than it contributed. No dramatic confrontation followed. He simply reduced contact, reset expectations, and stopped volunteering emotional energy where it wasn't valued. And within a month, he told me, I finally feel like I'm living my own day again. That's what the check is for, giving your mind permission to see the truth. When the non-conscious mind signals imbalance, it is not asking you to fight harder. It is asking you to observe more honestly. Before we move into the next chapter about real stories and cultural mirrors, ask yourself this. Which of the 5 signals speaks the loudest in your life right now? You can care about someone deeply and still recognize that the relationship is costing you more than it gives. That's not coldness, that's awareness. And awareness is the beginning of freedom. If you have been moving through these insights and feeling something shift inside of you, that shift isn't sudden. It's the accumulation of everything your mind has been trying to say to you. You are not imagining the drain. You are not exaggerating the tension. You are not too sensitive. You are finally listening to the signals that were never meant to be muted. And here's the line I want you to remember. You don't lose people when you create distance. You lose the version of yourself that learned to function without being supported. And that loss is actually a return to honesty, a return to your identity, a return to a life where connection feels mutual and not managed. Think about how much energy you've spent bracing, adjusting, translating yourself into smaller shapes. Think about the moments when joy felt complicated because you weren't sure how it would land. That's not connection, that's containment. The mind wasn't designed to live in containment. It was designed to grow, imagine, choose, and expand. And relationships are meant to support that growth, not require you to diminish it. So here's the mic drop truth. When a relationship repeatedly asks you to shrink, stepping back isn't distance, it's dignity. It is your mind saying, I am worth more than this emotional pattern. And once you hear that, you can't unhear it. The moment you stop negotiating with your own exhaustion is the moment you start coming back to yourself. If what you heard today stirred something awake in you, I want to give you a way to continue this work with support that actually meets your mind where it is. My book, Help in a Hurry, gives you the deeper understanding, the science, the stories, and the tools behind moments like these. And if you're ready for a structured daily guidance, my 21-day brain detox course is there to walk you through the process step by step. You can find it at drleaf.com/courses. If you want something you can act on immediately, my 19-lesson Help in a Hurry course was built for fast practical application. The book helps you read deeply, the courses help you act quickly. All of them were created to help you protect the steadiness you've started to reclaim. Understanding your inner signals is one of the most meaningful forms of self-respect. And now, after everything we've explored together, how patterns form, how your mind predicts tension, how emotional cost accumulates, you may feel something shifting inside of you. Not a dramatic moment, but a quiet recognition that your experiences were all along. Caring for someone and caring for yourself have never been opposites. One asks you to show up for the relationship, the other asks you to show up for your inner world. And creating space or stepping back or simply admitting you're tired, None of that makes you unkind. It makes you honest. Honesty brings its own kind of calm. It gives shape to feelings that once felt unorganized. And once something has shape, it can finally be understood instead of managed. If you've been shrinking, adjusting, or monitoring yourself in small ways, I want you to acknowledge how much strength it took to move through life like that. Adaptation demands so much energy, and you've likely been doing more of that than you ever realized. But awareness carries the truth with it. You are allowed to stop carrying what has been costing you, not out of anger, not out of avoidance, simply out of respect for your mind's need for steadiness. Think about the people who make you feel expansive, the ones who bring out your warmth, your humor, your clarity. That feeling isn't an accident, it's alignment. It's your mind remembering what healthy connection feels like. Stepping back doesn't mean closing a door forever. It means opening one internally to your own voice, your own identity, your own emotional breath. And if grief rises in that space, that's also natural. Grief doesn't always come from endings. Sometimes it becomes from realizing what you've tolerated. And as we close this conversation, I want you to hold a single truth gently. You are allowed to choose relationships that support your expansion, not your contraction. That choice doesn't require permission. It requires honesty, and honesty is the beginning of peace.